Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, Bob Duff, who worked for many years for the Windsor Star and now is a freelance writer. And our special guest today is Nashville Predators broadcaster Pete Weber, who's been on this show before. We're always thankful to have him. Pete, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much, and I'm just happy to be able to talk some hockey. We've talked theoretically about it, haven't we, now for weeks, but not a chance to really talk about the game.
Yeah, well, let's start right there. Even though I fear we are where baseball was not so long ago, where we had an agreement in place that the NHL agreed to, not anticipating that it was going to be worse than they expected, and now the rank and file, the players are saying, "Well, wait a minute here, didn't we already agree to?" What you were going to take out in terms of escrow, and now you're trying to take out a little bit more. We're saying all that, and before I get you to comment on that, I have some faith that Gary Bettman and Donald Fehr, this is not their first rodeo. They've been at this a while. They're not going to play games of chicken trying to guess what the other guy may or may not do. They're too experienced to do that. So even though this is sort of a tense time because I think the players feel slighted, I have faith that they're going to eventually work this out.
Well, I have that faith as well. And when you consider what both have gone through in their careers, and in particular, what Donald Fehr went through on the baseball side of things, I think he learned an awful lot there about let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But the reason we brought you on is to talk about the Predators. If you look at their salary cap situation, they're in a position that not many teams are in. They have some cap space available. There are teams that have to get under the cap. They're going to have to get rid of some players. The Predators, it seems to me, are in a position if they want to deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning, they could certainly do that and get, probably a lot back for taking, one of their players. Do you think they'll use that cap space to do that? Or do you see them, going after Mike Hoffman or, making a deal to bring in some other forward?
I think they will use the cap space, and I think they would prefer to do it in a deal rather than in a signing of a free agent. And I'm not going to get things started with tampering here, but I think there's a certain guy who used to be in Spokane who might be very attractive off that Tampa roster that could have a huge impact here in Nashville. So, there's only one guy from Spokane. I'm sorry, I already have Tampa.
Yeah, no, I see that as a good fit as well. I was sliding into that second line, Duchesne playing over on the wing, which he did last season, that would certainly make some sense. What have you thought thus far, Pete, of the moves that David has made? David Poile, the general manager.
Well, I thought that was a good move. I mean, I know it's going to cost some money the next several years on Kyle Turris, but Kyle Turris, after a few months here, just didn't seem to be an answer. Maybe we didn't have the correct question for him. And then, the room has been made now. I mean, so there's no more. Now, Nick Bonino, I think losing him is going to hurt because he was a Swiss Army knife for this team. He could fill in almost anywhere and probably had the most consistent setup over the course of the year on his wings, oftentimes Craig Smith, sometimes Mikhail Granlund as well. And I think that he's going to do very well in Minnesota. But now what does Luke Cunnin do coming in here? He's going to have a great opportunity. Yakov Trenin is going to have more than just a blink at what he could do for the Predators right now. And he's doing a pretty good job over with Vladimir Putin's favorite team, SKA St. Petersburg. Kalle Yarncroke is going to get a chance to play up a little bit. And the guy I think, though, that really is probably going to be elevated through the lineup is going to be Colton Sissons, who has been another Swiss Army knife type, who has played center, who has played on the wing. And I think the best example of what he can do was what he did when Ryan Johansson was injured and could not play in the 2017 conference and Stanley Cup final. And he filled in big with the last game against Anaheim with a hat trick. And he can play physically. He wins faceoffs. He is one of those guys that probably was undervalued. And I think now he's going to have the chance to be at least valued properly, if not overvalued. And we'll see now also how Philip Tomasino, who is playing overseas right now as well, is going to have a real chance to make this club a year after his draft.
I look at some of the moves they've made, Pete, and they might not be considered earth-shattering news that's going to knock the Tennessee Titans off the front page of the Nashville paper, but
particularly this week.
Yeah, they're not going to. They didn't do you any favors. The way I'm looking at it, they bring in Gorovetsky and Kuehne. I mean, don't they consult you on these moves when they bring these guys in?
The only time they've really consulted me is when they traded Shea Weber for PK Subban, and they asked me, should we get another Weber on the roster? They did that, but now the only Weber around is me, so I guess there's still a chance they might be able to bring Yannick back if they so chose. But, the names, I'm very happy, Bob, that my collegiate major was modern languages. I had no idea when I selected that how much it would help me in my future profession.
I got to follow up that too. I got to ask you now that he's moved on. Were you ever tempted, or did you ever go Bonino when he scored a goal?
I was tempted, but I realized I was incapable. And I spent a lot of time during the Cup final where the Punjabi broadcast was right next to ours in one or two of the games. So I would oftentimes peek around the divider there and talk to them about that. But that was when he was still with Pittsburgh. And but the Bonino, that's a tremendous call, and that would be like me trying to do Harry Carey and say it might be, it could be, it is. Though I will say this, Bob and Kevin, I oftentimes have borrowed from the great Ernie Harwell when a puck goes fluttering into the stands and saying that fell into the lap of a fan from Bell Buckle, Tennessee.
I like that. I got to say, PK probably has you as a hockey player, but I think you hold your own in terms of entertainment value with PK.
Well,
both of you guys are pretty good entertainers, so you might actually be above him in that regard.
Well, now that I don't know, that's like something I should take out of some of the Broadway magazines or the Broadway sheets. Kevin Allen says, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, I like that. We probably used too much shorthand when we were talking before. I was starting to think that maybe not everyone knew what we were talking about. Tyler Johnson is from played in Spokane. So what we're talking about before, in case we didn't make that clear, is that the Tampa Bay Lightning, they've got to move players out. And Tyler Johnson is the type of player that you wouldn't be just taking a guy and it would be dead weight salary. He scored 29 goals 2 seasons ago.
Right.
Still a good player. And right now the Predators are lacking in that second line. They've got to have somebody to move in. And I think Johnson would be a good fit. I think it's one of those things, though, knowing what situation Tampa Bay's in, you've got to hold out. You've got to, instead of giving something for Johnson, you've got to get something back. Because Johnson's salary at $5 million for 4 years, you're taking in a lot.
Yes, you are, and that leaves roughly $7 million on the total cap for the Predators. If cap friendly is as accurate as we all in this business hope that it is.
Yeah, that's for sure. If you talk with people around the league, as we often do. The sense of the Predators is, Pete, that it's at the crossroads. We don't know which way it's headed. It wasn't that long ago they were in the final, but we look at that team and they're not an automatic playoff team anymore.
No,
there's a lot of changes that have been made just this off season, everything. But they're in a tough division. So how do you see that team? Do you have a sense it's at the crossroads as well?
Yes, I do. And I'm also, when we say in this division, I can't wait to get confirmation as to which division the team is actually going to play. It's rumors are that it'll be Preds, Blackhawks, and Blues, but then so long to Dallas, so long to Minnesota, and go back to Columbus and Detroit, add in Pittsburgh, and then the Florida teams. So that makes it a little bit different anyway. And I'd have to say that I know the people in Nashville would not be distraught if they could get the old rivalry with Detroit going back again. That would be some fun for a lot of the people who came down here initially to work in the 2 auto plants in Middle Tennessee. So that I think that would be nice. So, but if we're talking what was the Central Division, and I hate to talk in the past tense, but it sounds like that's what we're going to be dealing with. I would, I'm always afraid and greatly respectful of Colorado, and I think they've done a very good job of restructuring a little bit with a team that was very good. But now we're getting back into the area of the unknown and back to John Tortorella, back to the Detroit Red Wings, getting involved with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then, in Florida, obviously we have the Stanley Cup champions in Tampa, but the whole league is still, this is very much a theoretical conversation because we don't have anything really written down in stone yet.
No.
Well, I mean, Dolly Parton apparently has saved us from COVID, so maybe they can get her to work on the Predators next.
That would be good. I think she should probably be the first of the star anthem singers, right? That would be good. If indeed we have people in the building. And that's the other thing. I hope, I pray that very soon we can all get in the buildings with fans and all of that. But the news on a daily basis, particularly as we come up on American Thanksgiving, we have a situation here where everybody's expecting just a huge spike in COVID, and pray that doesn't happen.
And, Kevin and I talked about this last week too. I mean, back when they had the season, when they wrapped it up, Canada wasn't spiking like that. Canada is now. 2 of the places where
yes,
bubble were, Edmonton and Toronto, are both seriously afflicted with COVID now.
And the World Juniors in Edmonton. Whoa.
Yeah, and today they announced that 2 of the Canadian players in the junior training camp have COVID. So they're supposed to be in a bubble. So that's a little frightening too.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Yeah, that's the. I think you pretty much have to count on not having fans with, the vaccine not going to be available to the end of the second quarter, which puts it in late May. Started the third quarter to the mass. The masses. It'll be available before then for the elderly and for essential service personnel. So I don't know. I think we have to just count on no fans, which means big losses for
huge
owners to do that. But I think you got to play. I think owners realize that. You don't want to miss a season. You want to have the league set up to continue the momentum that they had going into the pandemic. I mean, we've been on a 10-year rise. It's just gotten better, better, and better, and you got to be ready to regain that momentum if you can. What do you sense, Pete, about David Poile? He's been at this a long time. He's in his 70s. My sense is the guys in the NHL, if you look at Lou Lamoriello as an example and Jimmy Rutherford, they just don't ever even entertain the idea of retiring. And I don't see that from David either. But what do you see from him?
I see he feels he still has some work to get done, and he wants to keep on doing it. And I see no reason why he can't or should not. He's still quite capable. And, maybe in Edmonton a couple years ago, he set the record for most wins by an NHL general manager in the regular season. And now he keeps on going. And I got to say, I was the MC of a night in February of '85 in Buffalo, where Scotty Bowman was honored as the all-time winningest coach. Gee, he didn't last very long after that, did he? He only went 17 more years. So I think I look at David as in the same way.
Well, Pete, it's always a pleasure to have you. We've run out of time with you, but we're always thankful to have you on and to provide your insights. And hopefully it won't be long, but we'll have you on. We'll be talking about how well the Predators are playing.
I would welcome that. As a matter of fact, we would open up. I would set off flares here in my indoor studio.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, Pete.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, that was Pete Weber, the Nashville Predators broadcaster, and a pretty frank discussion about. I think he's knows more about the Predators than everyone. I think he agrees with everyone else's assessment that this is Bob. They're right there. We just don't know which way they're going. It feels like they may be headed on a decline, but it wouldn't take much if Johansson and Duchesne would play like they're capable of playing, and if Philip Forsberg has another 35-goal season, and maybe they make that deal for Tyler Johnson. Their defense is excellent. Their lower pairing didn't measure up last year, and they're going to roll the dice with a new set this year. But for the most part, when you're dealing with Roman Josi and Ellis and I'm drawing a complete blank, Matthias Olin. They're good. That's a good mix. Or no, that's not right.
Ekblom.
That's who it is. Yes, it's terrible here. That's a pretty solid trio. You have both
teams have that.
No, exactly. So they're good 1, 2, 3. And then Dante Fabro is their young player who they think eventually will be good. I think they were a little disappointed in him last year. I think disappointing may be the wrong word. I think they thought he was farther along in his development than he was. They still think he's going to be an excellent player, but they were hoping that he'd be a little more polished. And whenever you think that a young player is ready, you're often found left wanting because it does take, especially for a defenseman, it takes a couple of years, but. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I've talked a lot about it's hard to get a read on what the Bruins are doing. And we heard a lot about perhaps they were going to trade Jake DeBrusk. And obviously they didn't do that. They re-signed him for a little $3.6 million, $3.7 million. And now he's back in the fold. They got under $3 million left, and they've got our good friends at Zdeno Chara still to resign. So it seems like that's enough money for him at this age, 43. How much do you give a 43-year-old? So, but what's going to happen there? Are they going to resign him or not?
Well, the statement from Don Sweeney was kind of puzzling when he was asked about Chara. He said it was status quo. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean status quo that he's still making up his mind? Status quo that he's coming back? Or he didn't really clarify what status quo meant.
Yeah, I took it as meaning that they're still talking and communicating, and I think I thought everybody was kind of waiting to see what happened with DeBrusk, and they got that resolved. They didn't trade him, and I think that's a good decision. I didn't understand why they would. I mean, he's a younger player who can score 20 goals. And he's, you build around that. Like they're an older team. Their top players are older, with some exceptions. I have McAvoy on defense and, they have some younger players, but so they needed him, I felt, and I didn't understand, that some people said, yeah, but this is what he is. This is what he is. He's not going to get better. That Jake DeBrusk that we see now at age 23 is exactly what we're going to see going forward. And my reaction was, yeah, all right. But, I'm okay with Jake DeBrusk the way he is now. Those guys, you need those guys to win. You need the guys that are, got a little bite and scored 20 goals. He's got hockey in his DNA. He was brought up in a hockey family. He seems to make the right plays when you need it. So, I'm glad. I think sometimes the best decisions you make is when you don't trade someone, and I think they've made the right decision here. It's like I've said about Winnipeg as well. I think it would be a huge mistake to trade Patrick Laine, just because guys with his scoring ability, with his release on his shot, do not come along, very often.
Yeah, and from reading what the Boston media was assessing of DeBrusk, it's a guy that they know he can score. They'd like him to play a little harder, be a little tougher to play against. On that on a consistent basis, he kind of reminds you, in a little not in similar in what they mean to the team, maybe, but with Anthony Mantha with the Red Wings, yeah, he can score, and he's as you say, those guys are not a dime a dozen. You don't want to give up those guys, but I think the Red Wings would like to see Mantha play a little bit harder and go to the net a little more, and I think we started to see some signs of that last year. But I think the Bruins, you wonder almost, was this, the trade thing, was it all just a ruse to try to put a little scare into DeBrusk maybe? Because it was like they sat back and said, well, let's see what we can get for what price in free agency in terms of goal scoring. And when they didn't get anything, now they've got DeBrusk on a bridge deal where he's going to have to produce to get the big ticket money on his next contract. So Boston's in kind of a good position, I think, with this deal, where they've kind of put the ball in DeBrusk's court to deliver the goods.
Yeah, I like your theory, Bob. There might be something to that you just planted that seed. Maybe they leaked it, the ones that leaked it out, and then it just got legs. But that was their intention, and to let him think, well, my gosh, why don't they want me? Maybe to take stock. But interesting that this is indeed a bridge deal. He didn't get a home run, didn't get to the 5-year, 6-year, 7-year contract. But I will say this: the bridges are getting longer, and by that I mean in the terms of the price. Bridge deals used to be $2 million, and now they're 3.7. And that's happened over the last couple of years. But it's those second contracts that really sort of play havoc with your cap. If you can get a bridge deal, that's a little bit easier, but some of these guys are getting big deals on their second contracts, and then that makes it difficult because now you're building off a much higher number moving forward.
I think you can certainly see that teams are a little bit scared about spending money. I mean, in a league where goal scoring is so limited, there's so many few guys that can put it in the net. You see a guy like Hoffman still sitting out there. You see an Andreas Athanasiou, granted a guy with warts, but a guy who also scored 30 goals in a season, still sitting out there. Teams need goals, and that there's two pretty proven goal scorers that aren't even getting a sniff.
Well, it's interesting, too, that, when we had Brian Hedger on from the Columbus Dispatch, he was talking about Granlund. Michael Granlund is still out there. And one of the issues for him is, Max Domi was happy to come to Columbus because he wanted to play center, and not everybody views him as a center. Some people think he doesn't, work hard enough to handle the center duties. Well, Granlund's desirability, or a reason why he is interested in Columbus, is because he doesn't want to play center, even though he has been a center at times in his career. He thinks he's more effective on the wing, getting the puck, when he wants it for the shot. Which reminds me, too, I wanted to circle back on Mantha. There aren't many guys left in the NHL who, when they shoot the puck from 35 feet, that they're dangerous. But Mantha is one of those guys. Like, Mantha comes over the line, takes a couple of strides, and he takes that wrist shot, and it's a bomb. I mean, it really is a bomb that leaves his stick. And if he's got a defender in front of him that provides a little bit of a screen, that puck has a chance to go in. Now, we used to see that all the time in the 1980s and into the early 1990s, and the Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Mike Bossy, and those players with that, Yzerman, Howardchuk, they could do that. And then we started to play more dedicated defense, and then that stopped happening. So when you get guys like that, and Laine is one of those guys as well. You can snap that shot, and it's just searing as it goes toward the net. And those guys always seem to know how to utilize that defenseman. Waiting the right time to that defenseman is just a little bit in the way, providing an obstruction to the sight line of the goalie.
I'd put Elias Pettersson in that category too. I
For
saw
sure.
him score a goal in Detroit a couple of years ago where it looked like a Guy Lafleur goal. He came down the left wing and he just unleashed a bomb, and from about just inside the top edge of the face-off circle, and Jimmy Howard just looked stunned that nobody does that. How do you do that?
No.
I can't believe that somebody scored on him like that, because you say it just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, it is funny too to see the older players' reactions to the new stick models now. Like when they come in the dressing room and they pick up, and they used to play with trees essentially that were cut down on Tuesday and made hockey sticks out of on Thursday, and now they see these lightweight, with the right torque in them and specially designed and aerodynamically sleek or whatever they do to them, and they just marvel at that. I think I've seen it might have been Bobby Hall said if I had the sticks of today, I'd have scored 90 goals, that sort of thing. But it was a different time then. The goalies, were not very well protected, so they were intimidated with the big shots. We certainly don't see goalies intimidated today by a shot.
I remember when my last year at college, I was going to college part-time, and I was had working part-time actually for the Hockey News, going down and covering the Odd Leaf game, and I was playing in a rec league in college, and I played goal my whole life, and I decided I'm going to play out this year just to have some fun, see what it's like. And first, living on a college budget, you didn't have a whole lot of money for stuff beyond food and shelter, and wouldn't you know it, I'm playing a game that afternoon, I break my last stick. So I was going to cover a Leaf game that night. It happened to be against Pittsburgh, and a friend of mine I knew named Greg Hotham was playing for the Penguins then. And I was down in the room afterward, and we got talking, and he said, "Can I get you anything?" I thought, "Well, you got a stick?" He says, "Yeah, who's do you want?" And he starts naming all the stars. I said, "I don't care as long as they shoot right. I broke my stick today. I don't have a stick." Well, he got me Andre Saint Laurent stick. And this thing, you want to talk about a tree. I used that stick for a year. That's how solid it was. I could slash anybody, never had to worry about it breaking. It was just unbelievable how big and heavy that stick was. And people who don't remember Andre Saint Laurent, he was one of the best face-off men in hockey. He was a checking center, a defensive guy, didn't score a lot of goals. But look at that. The sticks were designed for what role you played in those days too. I remember the famous story about Gordie Howe picking up Black Jack Stewart's stick, who was a rugged defenseman for the Red Wings, and Gordie couldn't get over how big it was. He says, how do you score goals with this? And Black Jack said, "I don't, Gordie, I break arms."
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say about Saint Laurent. I'm sure that heavy lumber was used on a face-off circle to hack and whack at the wrists of the guy that he was taking the face-off from. I own. That's a long story that I'll tell some other time. I actually have a stick owned by the late Gary Bergman, who played for Canada in the 72 Summit Series and played for the Red Wings for many years. And it is the heaviest stick that I've ever held. It's just a colossal piece of wood. I just can't imagine that they played, especially with today's lightweight sticks. Speaking of that, I just read a pretty comical social media post from a guy whose son is 7 years old and hasn't really decided whether he's a left-hand shot or a right-hand shot.
I read that post too.
Yeah, so I really laughed at that, because with the cost of sticks today, I understand that poor man's misery. So he's trying to sort out, what are you going to do here, and it puts a lot of pressure on a 7-year-old at that age. But that was that brightened my day to read that story. Like I said, it's a kind of a serious economic issue for the man, but for the rest of us, it's pretty comical. And it is strange. In the hockey world, it's just normal. But if you're right-handed, you shoot left-handed, but not everybody. And it's just a comfort thing. So it's the oddest thing. I'm not sure why that is. I'm sure there's some explanation.
You mentioned Gary Bergman. I can remember in the, I want to say, mid-'90s, there was a media versus the Red Wings alumni game at Joe Louis. It was part of some, they had some Christmas thing going on. They had a skills competition, and they put this media game on against the alumni. And Bergman was playing for the alumni. And I was asked late to play, and so they already had a goalie. So again, I got stuck playing out. And the puck went in the corner, and I went in the corner with Gary Bergman, and somehow we got tangled up, and we both ended up on the ice. And I looked over at him, and I saw this menacing look in his eyes, and I just thought, "Oh, please don't kill me."
yeah, exactly.
I remember the face-off, the opening face-off. I was lined up on the wing against Johnny Wilson, and I knew Johnny for years, and I said, "Hey, Johnny, how's it going?" And he turned and he just glared at me, and it was like, "I'm not your friend for the next hour. Don't be nice to me." I mean, even though these guys were in their 60s and 70s, some of them, it was game time, and they were ready to play.
Well, the late Ted Lindsay got booted out of some senior leagues just because he took it too seriously. He only knew one way to play, which was ruthless. That was his playing style, ruthless. And it was his style when he was in his 80s, and it was his style when he was in the 20s. So, well, on that note, we've run out of time. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be back on. No, we won't be back on Thursday because it's Thanksgiving here in the U.S. Bob has already had his Turkey Day, and now it's our turn in the U.S., so we will not be here. But we'll see you again next week for a new edition of HockeyDebates.com podcast.
Before we go, we have to quickly, speaking of giving thanks, Braden Holtby's Turtles made it home to Canada. And I don't want to say that we had anything to do with that, but we mentioned it on our show, and within hours of us mentioning on our show, permission was granted for his Turtles to come to Canada. So I think we're going to take credit for it, whether we had anything to do with it or not.
Well, someone told me that we had it wrong, that it's tortoises, not turtles.
Well, they are technically tortoises, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. So, which is a little bit different. But I know a young teenager who's an expert on, already as a teenager, an expert on animals and species. And I'm sure he would not be pleased that I've misidentified a tortoise. So, but anyway, I'm happy to hear that because, who knows how that would have impacted Braden Holtby if his tortoises had not been able to cross the border.
Yeah, you hate to think about a man being separated from his tortoises.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.
Okay, have a great time, everybody.